he would really be able to command the offense and command his teammates. Welcome in. It's the Breer Report for June the 24th. The NFL has officially shut down for the summer. There are no mini camps. There are no OTAs this week. And the next time you'll see players in NFL facilities, we will be at the doorstep of 2025 training camp. So I figured this week we would go over a few things that I covered in this week's takeaways column, wrapping up the spring. And you can check out all those takeaways at the mmqb.com. But three things in particular that I thought I would take you through here today in this edition of the Breer Report. Number one was the progress that Jayden Daniels has made, the progress the Commanders have made coming off of last year, which was a historic season for a rookie quarterback. They go 12-5. They make it to the NFC Championship game. Jayden Daniels is exactly the right kind of person that you want as the face of your franchise. Went through a lot of ups and downs already in college, having been in college for 5 years, 3 years at Arizona State, 2 at LSU, won a Heisman Trophy, has seen both sides of it. So he was incredibly equipped to adjust to the NFL. And so now the question becomes, where is the growth potential? Because you see some of the younger guys that played less in college, and there's this enormous ceiling that they're chasing. That's Drake May, that's Caleb Williams, that's J.J. McCarthy. With somebody like Jayden Daniels, it's a little bit different. Again, because he does have more experience, because he did start a lot of games in college, because there is so much that he has already covered as a football player and had covered as a football player, which set him up to succeed as a rookie. So when the Commanders came out of the season, there were a couple of things they wanted to do. The first thing was they wanted to make sure that they were on the same page with the people that were working with Jayden Daniels. And for people who don't know the way it works, NFL teams can't really work with their players through the months of February and March. After the Commanders were eliminated from the playoffs, that's sort of it as far as the on-field stuff that you can do, the instruction that you can do. And generally, players retreat to go and work with their own personal trainers. In the case of a quarterback, their throwing coaches. And so what Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury wanted to do was they wanted to link up with Jayden's personal throwing coach that out at 3D QB in Orange County in California. That's Taylor Kelly, who's a former Arizona State quarterback. And the first thing that they did was they made sure that Taylor Kelly was speaking the Commanders' language to Jayden Daniels. So there wouldn't be any, all right, he's got to transition to talking about this way now, then he's got to transition to talking this way again. They wanted to make sure that all of that was seamless. And so when they were talking about the things that they wanted to do, and really a lot of it for Jayden Daniels is what a lot of quarterbacks work on, which was footwork and timing up his footwork with the routes in the offense and his eyes, just kind of syncing all of that up. They wanted to make sure that Taylor Kelly was speaking the same language to Jayden Daniels. They were able to accomplish that. It made it easier for Jayden to hit the ground running when he got to Orange County to prepare for the offseason program. Then, ahead of the offseason program, they wanted to look inward, and every team does this, goes through the self-scouting process, looks at the things they do well, looks at the things they don't do well. But instead of expanding on the offense, they wanted to streamline what they did, and they wanted to really focus in on what they did well. And there would be two things that would be accomplished by doing that. First, they really felt like it would get the offense playing faster, and that if the players know we're leaning into the things that you did well in 2024, well, you're going to be able to get a lot accomplished in the spring and summer of 2025. And having that basis was important. So they went in, they said, we didn't do X, Y, and Z well. We're throwing that out. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We did all of that stuff well. We're going to lean into that. We're going to build off of that. And so they felt like that would give everyone a chance to hit the ground running when they got to the offseason program in April. And for Jayden in particular, it would give him a better chance to really take ownership of the offense. And when he got there in April, and when OTA started in May, and when the mini camp came around in June, he would really be able to command the offense and command his teammates. And that can be hard for a second-year player. As a rookie, you kind of have to know your place. It's a big step for a quarterback going into year two, where you're going to be a captain, you're going to be the leader of the huddle, and a lot of people are going to look to you. So by streamlining the offense and leaning into what they already did well, obviously that is stuff that Jayden did well because he is the quarterback, and he's able to take ownership of all of that. So they really feel like they've set things up in a way where when they get to training camp, this is going to be a moving train, and they're going to be able to really build some momentum going into the season. It's going to be tough to match what they did a year ago, of course. Again, 12-5 conference title game. The schedule isn't easy. Every team in the NFC East has to play the NFC North and the AFC West this year. But the Commanders really feel like they put together a good plan for Jaden Daniels. They still have some pieces of business to take care of between now and the start of training camp that could affect Jaden Daniels, namely the Terry McLaurin contract extension. But they really feel like they're in a good place with their quarterback, and they have every reason to feel that way. All right, our second topic, and we went over the Ravens signing of Jair Alexander a little bit last week. I want to dive a little bit more into the global look at why you do something like this. Now, of course, a lot of people have talked about Jair's existing relationship with Lamar Jackson as the Ravens try to do a deal with Lamar. And I think that is a side benefit. But I think what less people have paid attention to is how this is part of a trend the Ravens have really taken ownership of over the last decade or so. And, when we talk about free agency, when everybody's heading into March, it's about the guys who are 25, 26, 27 years old that are going to get the massive second contracts, the life-changing second contracts. And as people like me warn, oftentimes those contracts don't wind up looking very good 2 or 3 years down the road. It is very much a seller's market. It is not a buyer's market. It is a market that favors the players, and the players sometimes get overvalued on that market. I'm not saying that in any sort of way that's offensive to players. It just is what it is. When you do a deal early, generally the team has a little bit of an advantage because they have your contractual rights. When a player makes it to the market, he's going to have the advantage. So how do you make the most out of that market? Well, the Patriots during the back end of their dynasty, and now the Ravens over the last 10 years or so have taken advantage of it by leaning in on signing third contract veterans. And to me, this is very, very interesting. There are so many names, and I don't know if many people are paying attention to this. Guys who are on their third contract, some of these guys into their 30s, that the Ravens have signed and gotten a lot out of on the back end of their careers. Guys like Mark Ingram, I have him down as having signed a 3-year, $15 million deal with the team going into his 9th year. He had over 1,200 scrimmage yards his first year with the Ravens, which was also Lamar Jackson's first year as a full-time starter there. Lamar wins the MVP in part because Mark Ingram was able to put together that kind of year on the back end of his career. Some more names: Eric Weddle, Earl Thomas, Calais Campbell, Kevin Zeitler, Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy. Derrick Henry from it last year is a great example of it. And so why does this work out so often? Well, I think there are really a few reasons why the Ravens have leaned into this strategy, why the Patriots leaned into this strategy at the end of their dynasty as well. Number one, there is some certainty into what you're getting. You don't have to guess how a player is going to react to getting paid. Most of these guys have already gotten paid. Their financial securities their financial futures are secure. You're not guessing at how this guy is going to handle having a couple of extra zeros on the balance in his bank account. He's already been through that. So you have that level of certainty, how he's going to handle money. You also have an idea of who he is as a player. There's a longer track record there than there is with a guy who's only in his 4th year. Sometimes those guys coming out of year 4 or coming out of year 5 might have really gone through a bounce at the end of their rookie contracts. So you might only have a year or two of track record there. With all of these guys, all the guys that I named, and Jair Alexander, of course, is in that group as well. You've got a much longer track record. And then there's a leadership component of it. And that part of it's interesting too, because in a lot of cases, you don't make it that long in the NFL without having been put in some position of leadership. It doesn't mean that everybody is a Calais Campbell type of leader, but I think everybody who makes it to year 8, year 9, year 10 has been put in some sort of position in leadership over the course of his career and is ready to assume that type of role when he gets to a third contract. And so the Ravens are taking advantage of that as well. I think it's a smart strategy. It's something the Ravens, again, have really leaned into over the last decade and to great effect. And Jair Alexander, if he can stay healthy, which is a huge if because he's missed 20 games over the last 2 years, could be the latest example of that. All right, now we'll take you from the Ravens to perhaps the chief rival of the Ravens in the AFC, the chief nemesis of everybody in the AFC, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs and their offseason as they try to make a 6th Super Bowl in 7 years. 5 and 6 years is already a record. And I know there's this assumption out there that they're going to take some sort of step back. And I think that that's based on how they looked in the Super Bowl to some degree. We're all prisoners of the last thing we saw. And I think there are a lot of people who are prisoners to what they saw on Super Bowl Sunday. 40-22 was the final against the Eagles. It wasn't even that close. It was 40-6 with 5 minutes left in that game. And so the question is where the Chiefs go from here. And I think the answer is, I think they're going to wind up going to the place that they thought they were going last year. That got kind of short-circuited by injury. On defense, I think they're good enough to hold serve. Steve Spagnuolo is going to put together another really good defense. They'll have to make up for the loss of Justin Reed. That is a loss. They bring back Nick Bolton. That was big for them, being able to get him back. They still have some contractual things to work out on that side of the ball. Do they extend Trent McDuffie? Do they extend George Karlaftis? Those are questions they're going to have to answer. But I do think you can expect a really good defense from the Chiefs in 2025. Offensively, I think they have a chance to get better. And the reason why is because of a couple of guys that are coming off of injury that they expect to be full go for training camp. And that's Josh Simmons, the left tackle they drafted out of Ohio State, suffered a torn patellar tendon at the beginning of October last year. It's a really bad knee injury, worse than an ACL for a big man. It's a little bit of a surprise that he's going to be back in full go at the start of training camp. But that's where he is. He's checked all the boxes over the course of the spring. And then you have Rashee Rice, who didn't show much limitation at all in the spring. He's, of course, coming back from a knee injury as well. And the Chiefs think that he could be a top 10 receiver in the NFL. And so the vision for the Chiefs last year was to have Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy running downfield, and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce running underneath into those big open spaces that the speed on the outside vacates, and Patrick Mahomes being able to reactivate the downfield part of the Chiefs passing game, which is going to make everybody more dangerous. It didn't really come to pass. Rice got hurt. Hollywood Brown got hurt. That group of 4 players I just mentioned never got a chance to play together. So if Rashee Rice is back and at full strength, then I think you've really got something at the skill positions as far as carrying out that vision that they had last year. Then on the offensive line, and this is where the biggest question is, this is where the biggest problem was in the Super Bowl. On the offensive line, you've got 3 tackles competing for 2 spots. You are going to have to replace Joe Thuney. That is no small loss. Kingsley Suamataia is likely to be the left guard. Who the left tackle is remains an open question. Josh Simmons is probably the most talented left tackle in the draft class of 2025. He was hurt. There were some, I think, questions about his football makeup. But to this point, he is answering those in the Chiefs building. And so they feel like he's in a position to compete for a job, for a starting job, day one of training camp. So you got Simmons in there. You got Jalen Moore coming over from the Niners. You got Jawan Taylor, who's been up and down as their right tackle, was a big sign for them a couple of years ago. Can you find 2 really good starting tackles out of those 3 guys? There is talent among those 3 guys. So can you find 2 really good stars among those 3 guys? And then can Kingsley Suamataia or Caliendo or someone else answer their left guard question in a way that doesn't answer it the way that Joe Thuney answered it, but gives them a viable answer? Can they get so much better at tackle? Because tackle was an issue last year that it negates what they lost at guard. And because there will be a little bit of a step back there. And if you remember in the Super Bowl, they didn't even have Joe Thuney at guard. They had Joe Thuney at tackle. So you could look at this and say, there's a real chance, there's a real path to getting better on the offensive line. So if that vision plays out on offense, in the offensive skill group, if that vision if the position battles play out the way they're hoping they do on the offensive line, I think Patrick Mahomes has a chance to go downfield more. I think the vision they had in 2024 plays out in 2025, and they could wind up being more dangerous, getting healthier in the backfield. Isaiah Pacheco coming back doesn't hurt either. I just have a hard time looking at the Chiefs and saying, yeah, this is going to be where their step back is. And they could get older in spots. Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, obviously they've got some age there. But I think this has got a chance again to be a really, really good team. And it should be a team that has full expectation of being there on championship weekend. And they've been there 7 years in a row. Whether or not they make it 8, I think is sort of the bar for them. And then if you get there, who knows what can happen from there. So I think they're very much in play to be every bit as good, maybe even better than they were a year ago. Appreciate you guys coming out. We will have one more of these before I go on my summer break, my own personal summer break. We'll be away for a couple of weeks, but we do have a mailbag coming for you on Wednesday. We will see you guys then.